Everything you know about fantasy football just changed because the NFL preseason just wrapped up and we got a ton of information on how certain players are going to be used. So in this video, we're going to break it all down to help you when it comes to your upcoming fantasy drafts, or maybe some players you should be adding on the waiver wire right now. If you're not familiar, I'm Sal Vetri. I've been helping people win their fantasy leagues for nearly 8 years, and I plan to do the same for you in this video. And let's start it off with Rome Odunze, who by all accounts right now, and what we just saw in the preseason, he's standing out right now as the Chicago Bears' #1 wide receiver. Yes, their #1 wide receiver as he enters year 2. This is the Bears' third and final preseason game. You can see all the way down at the bottom, their quarterback Caleb Williams played 28 snaps. So that means the first team offense in this game played about 28 snaps, a decent amount, about half the game. Rome Odunze played 100% of those snaps. He ran 100% of the routes, all 17. And look at this, 5 targets compared to just 1 for DJ Moore, 3 for Olamide Zaccheaus in this game. He had 5 targets on 17 routes run. That's a 38% target share, which would have led the NFL last year. Of course, this is a small sample, but it's just to show you how much he was being targeted by Caleb Williams, who loved throwing him the rock. And this makes a lot of sense. This is a top 10 overall pick talent coming into year 2 now in a much better situation when it comes to the coaching, the offensive line, and just how Caleb Williams looks entering year 2, especially what we saw in the preseason under Ben Johnson. Caleb Williams was looking pretty solid. In terms of him and DJ Moore, they're going to be the top 2 wide receivers on this team. That's going to be his biggest target competition, but DJ Moore was not running a lot of downfield routes in the preseason. Rome Odunze was running those downfield routes where there's 20-plus yard gains potential to be had, and that's where you see these explosive plays for fantasy football that you like. The chunk gains of 30 yards on a reception, you get 4 or 5 points. Maybe a 20-plus yard touchdown. That's where Rome Odunze was operating for the Bears as a true alpha. Something to note, because if you still have your fantasy drafts coming up, Rome Odunze goes as the 78th overall pick right now. You can get this guy in like round 7 or 8. That is an absolute steal where he's currently going, and if you have already had your fantasy draft, well, maybe he's somebody that you should consider trading for. Now, the next player we have to talk about, there's a lot that goes into this one. Jacory Krosky-Merritt's the talk of the town right now. The Commanders traded away Brian Robinson because the 7th round pick, Jacory Krosky-Merritt out of Arizona, was producing really well. But here's the thing that we have to break down. In week 3 of the preseason, a lot of people believe that he was being rested with the starters. And maybe he was, because if you look at this right here via PFF, this is the week 3 starting offense, obviously with Sam Darnold, so there was no Jaden Daniels for the Commanders. This is just going to be the backups here, but Chris Rodriguez started this game. Austin Ekeler did not play either as a veteran rest day, and Jacory Krosky-Merritt did not play, so people are saying, oh, Krosky-Merritt didn't play, that means Chris Rodriguez is behind him on the depth chart, so Merritt's the guy you want to be drafting earlier in fantasy drafts. And again, maybe this is true, but it was also reported on Thursday in practice, just a couple of games before that final preseason game, that Jacory Krosky-Merritt was dealing with a shoulder injury, had a non-contact jersey on, so my guess is that even if he was feeling better a couple of days later from the shoulder soreness, that they just said, let's not risk it. Let's not go out there as a running back with a shoulder injury. So in my opinion, Jacory Krosky-Merritt was not rested with the starters. He had a banged up shoulder. Chris Rodriguez, the last time that we saw him, who I think is going to profile out as the starting RB on this team at least week 1, he was actually playing ahead of Jacory Krosky-Merritt in their last preseason game. All this to say, though, it's a gross 3-headed backfield here in Washington. So when we look at the current ADPs, if you still have a fantasy draft, right now of where Jacory Krosky-Merritt goes, this is where he was going like a couple of days ago, right? 139th overall. This is not updated by the day, which means he's like a 12th round pick. But if you're currently doing mock drafts, or you're currently doing like a best ball draft, you'll see Jacory Krosky-Merritt's going as like a 7th or 8th round pick, which is crazy because it's not even guaranteed that he's a starting running back on this team. Even if he is, it's not guaranteed he's good. He's a 24-year-old 7th round rookie running back, right? And Austin Ekeler is also still on this team. So as it stands right now, as a 7th or 8th round pick, I don't want Jacory Krosky-Merritt. I would love to be selling high on him as fast as I possibly can right now if you've already had your draft and he's on your team. Now, speaking of uncertain backfields that got shaken up a ton so far in the preseason, let's go to this next one in Pittsburgh. Because as of right now, by all accounts, it's looking like, based on all the training camp reports and what we've gotten out of the 3 preseason games, Jaylen Warren looks to be, at least for week 1, the starting running back on the Steelers, while Caleb Johnson doesn't look like the RB2, their 3rd round rookie. He actually looks like the RB3 after Kenneth Gainwell. Let's break this down. Because as you can see from the 3rd preseason game, Jaylen Warren got his first start. He ended up missing the first couple of games with an injury and a veteran rest day, and then it was Kenneth Gainwell who came in 2nd before Caleb Johnson came in 3rd. So Jaylen Warren, by all accounts, based off preseason and just the reports out of training camp, is going to be the starter at least for week 1. And for the 3rd straight week, Kenneth Gainwell played ahead of Caleb Johnson. That's a little bit concerning right now for Caleb Johnson. Again, it's just the preseason. These things can change. A 1,600-yard rusher out of college, a 3rd round pick. Caleb Johnson, a bigger body who Arthur Smith likes using at the running back position compared to a Kenneth Gainwell or Jaylen Warren. These guys are around like 205, 210 pounds. I do think that, again, this could change, but it seems right now that Jaylen Warren is the guy that you want here. Jaylen Warren is a guy who last year, even in a down season where he dealt with injuries, still averaged over 5 yards per touch. Since entering the NFL, Jaylen Warren has ranked top 10 in yards per carry and yards per touch, despite not having the best offenses around him. So if we were to look at this right now as the 80th overall pick in fantasy drafts, I'm not jumping up and down to get Jaylen Warren in like the 7th or 8th round of drafts. Again, I'd rather have Rome Odunze across positions right here. Way more upside in my opinion. If you just scroll down a little bit, I think you have some more upside in guys like Ricky Pearsall, David Njoku across other positions. A round later, I'd rather have Jordan Mason. I'd rather have Emeka Ibuka, who probably doesn't go anymore in round 8 or 9. If we were to draft right now, is going to be like a 6th round pick, maybe even earlier than that. But the whole point is, Jaylen Warren is a fine pick, especially if you're in a draft where, say, you take like a Saquon Barkley in round 1, you go hero RB, you wait until round 7 to get your RB2. Jaylen Warren's not a bad option. Now, the next backfield we have to talk about, let's actually look at this one right here with the Kansas City Chiefs, because we got to see Isaiah Pacheco and the Chiefs starters. Patrick Mahomes played 21 snaps, Chiefs starters here. Isaiah Pacheco plays 12 of those snaps. That's 57% of the snaps. If we come over to the backfield carries, he had 3 backfield carries out of a 6 total. That's what these numbers are right here on PFF. So only 50% of the backfield carries, and he actually split the usage with 2 running backs. Again, it's just the preseason. He was still the primary back on the first drive of the game, but we did see both Kareem Hunt in this game play. Again, not really somebody that we're concerned about, but Brashard Smith, this was the big one. The 7th round rookie who's been getting some nice reviews out of training camp, in college has experience as a wide receiver as well. He actually played his first 2 snaps in the preseason with the starting offense. This doesn't mean anything in terms of, oh, he's stealing the job away from Isaiah Pacheco. No, Pacheco is still a fine fantasy pick where he currently goes, but what this means is that Brashard Smith has cleared both Elijah Moore and Carson Steele on the depth chart, and now he's somebody that at least has to be on our radars, especially if you're in like an 18 round draft with 6 bench spots. Maybe you're in a 14 or a 16 team fantasy league. Brashard Smith is slowly working his way up to being the backup RB for the Kansas City Chiefs, behind an Isaiah Pacheco who's coming off of an injury-riddled season. So this is worthwhile because Kareem Hunt wasn't efficient last year, wasn't good last year, just got a lot of carries. He's an older running back. If he misses time or just struggles, Brashard Smith could quickly become the RB2 here. And if you're not familiar with Brashard Smith, he's a 22-year-old rookie out of SMU. Again, he's a 7th round pick, and this is a guy who was productive in college. If you look at it right here, he had last year as his first year as a true workhorse back. Before this, he was mostly a wide receiver. He had 1,300 yards, 18 touchdowns. He reminds me a lot of Tyron Tracy in that regard, that like in his first year as a full workhorse, he actually dominated and went out there for like 6 yards per carry. You look at the receiving production, that's what he was formerly known for. Still had that, 39 receptions, 327 yards. I mean, this guy almost had 1,700 total yards, a 12% target share in his first full season as a running back. That's something that is worth noting. He currently goes undrafted in like all fantasy leagues. You don't have to draft this guy, right? We're bringing this up just to keep it on your radar as the season opens up. If an injury happened to Kareem Hunt, or you saw more usage than expected as a backup running back in like the first game of the season for Brashard Smith, that's somebody that in these deeper leagues should be handcuffed, should just be added to your roster, especially since we know Isaiah Pacheco has dealt with some pretty serious injuries as recent as, like 10 months ago. The next situation we have to talk about in backfields has to do with the Dallas Cowboys, and it's actually a good thing for what seems like their starter right now, Javonte Williams, because based off all reports right now, Javonte Williams is going to be the starting running back. He was rested once again for their 3rd preseason game, where we saw the rookie Jaden Blue play. He actually injured his ankle, although it's a low ankle sprain, not thought to be serious. We saw Deuce Vaughn play. Miles Sanders is actually banged up and hurt right now in practice. So like the only healthy running backs on this team are 1 Javonte Williams, 2 Phil Maffa, a late round running back, right? I believe a former quarterback, and 3 Deuce Vaughn, who by the time you're watching this might actually get cut from the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe Miles Sanders is the guy who gets cut as well. We're recording this just a couple hours before like the cut day stuff, so it could get a little bit tricky with that, just in case you're watching after. But as it stands right now, like, I don't want to get excited about Javonte Williams, but this is going to probably be like a borderline top 10 offense in Dallas, at least from a pass volume perspective. We know Javonte Williams can pass protect. We know he can catch passes. He was top 5 in running back targets and receptions last year with Denver. In his first season as a rookie, when Russell Wilson was checking it down to him, he was top 10 in receptions and targets amongst running backs on a per game basis as well. So this is a guy whose biggest competition is a rookie right now who's had an up and down training camp and is banged up, is Miles Sanders, who's currently banged up and hasn't had a good year since he was behind a great Eagles offensive line. So the way that it stands right now, like, if you haven't drafted your fantasy teams yet, Javonte Williams is like an 11th round pick, isn't a terrible option if you start your draft with like a hero RB, and then maybe you get a Jaylen Warren in round 7, you come back around in round 9 or 10 or 11 and you get a Javonte Williams. He's not the guy I'm relying on to be like my RB1 or flex, but if you have already filled out your wide receiver spots, you have a strong RB1, and then you just have to fill in some RB2 spots, yeah, Javonte's not a bad option to try and get you 10 to 15 points a week. Now, similar things could maybe be said about the Bears backfield. If we look at it, we showed you earlier, Caleb Williams played 28 snaps, and you actually see DeAndre Swift played 20 of those snaps with the first team offense. That's 71% of the snaps. If we come over to the backfield carries here, he saw 7 carries to just 1 for the only other running back who saw a snap with the starting offense, and that would be Britton Brown. But here's the thing about this game, the thing that a lot of people miss in this game. Both Roschon Johnson and Kyle Monangai, who seem to be the RB2 and 3 on this depth chart, were injured and did not play in this game. That's why DeAndre Swift played 71% of the snaps. At least that adds some context to it. Maybe he was going to play that either way, but I don't think so. And look, here's the deal. A lot of people are just like writing off Roschon Johnson in this backfield. All we've gotten so far this offseason, it's not a lot, which is maybe a good thing if they don't have to say a lot about Roschon Johnson, is that he seems to be be locked into the goal line and red zone and potentially pass protection, third down role on obvious passing downs ahead of DeAndre Swift. Okay, that's a pretty serious role. He's easily the RB2 on this team. I don't want to hear anything about Kyle Monangai right now. If you watched anything about Kyle Monangai in college, in the preseason and camp reports right now, this guy could maybe flash a little bit, but this guy cannot pass protect. You're not getting him put on the field for a Ben Johnson offense with Caleb Williams back there in year 2, needing all the protection he can get. That's why they upgraded the offensive line this offseason massively. You're not stepping on the field as a 7th round rookie if the coaches can't trust you, especially if it's a clear and obvious flaw that you cannot pass protect. I think it's going to be DeAndre Swift to start the season as the RB1, and Roschon Johnson will be sprinkled in on some serious downs. So although DeAndre Swift played 71% of the snaps, that needs to be a little bit of an asterisk because these two guys did not play. I actually think Roschon Johnson, who goes really late in fantasy drafts right now, is somebody that you should at least be targeting because, look, week 1, we could see Roschon Johnson play 50% of the snaps, maybe a surprise when he plays 60% of the snaps, and just like that, he's the RB1 in an improved offense, and he's on so many waiver wires. Just hold him until week 1 and see what happens. The other guy who looks like week 1 is going to be valuable, I'm not sure how much I really care about that though, but it is going to be Nick Chubb, right? Because this is a guy who rested with the starters for the Texans in their 3rd and final preseason game. He went out there and rested. Joe Mixon is still battling the foot injury. We don't know how long he's going to be out. As of this recording, there's still no timeline. So Nick Chubb, as of right now, looks to be the RB1 for this team. He goes as the 127th overall pick in fantasy drafts. That's the 13th round. Again, this is Nick Chubb. Like if Joe Mixon, if it comes out, oh, like he's going to be ready week 1 or he'll be ready by like week 5 or whatever. Like you're going to get a couple of weeks out of Nick Chubb, not a pass catcher, not the same back he once was, bad offensive line in Houston. And he also is, like, based on camp reports, actually competing with Dameon Pierce for touches right now. I wouldn't jump up and down about this. If anything, it is good news that he's going to be maybe lean the starter for week 1 as of right now. Before we get any updates on Joe Mixon, before we see Nick Chubb play week 1 and get 13 carries for 36 yards and no touchdown, right? That's probably what's going to happen. Try and trade Nick Chubb as fast as you can. Obviously, 1-for-1 deals for Nick Chubb aren't going to get you a lot, but if you could put him in a deal as like a sweetener to get a level up somewhere, that's what I'd be looking to do right now. Now, if you want to see where some of these players like Aroma Dunze rank in my top 50 overall rankings this year, you can get it completely free with the link in the description below, or you can head to fantasyrankingsfree.com. That will take you to this page where you enter your email, and I'll send you within a couple of minutes my top 50 overall rankings to help you dominate your drafts. Be sure to check your spam and especially your promotional folders. What you will get is the top 50 rankings tiered out and highlighted in green and red for the best and worst picks in all of those rounds. But if you're watching this right now, you probably have a fantasy draft either tonight or coming up very soon. So if you want to actually get my full top 250 rankings to help you crush the entire draft, all my other drafting tools and my in-season tools, that's why I built the Fantasy Blueprint. It's what I use in all my leagues, and over 10,000 people are currently using in their leagues. You can check out the Blueprint with the link in the description below to learn more on this page right here, or you can just head to jointheblueprint.com. That is jointheblueprint.com to learn more, and you can read all the reviews from people who used it last year, and most of these people are now back this year because based on the data that we have, almost 90% of people, 9 out of 10 people who were on the Blueprint last year are back this year, which I think is the best stat just to show that this is a quality product. 9 out of 10 people said last year, we got it, we liked it, we're back this year. Yeah, it's that good. So if you want to schmack around your friends in fantasy and make them wonder, how the heck did this guy get so good at fantasy football? Well, you can just go to jointheblueprint.com or click the link in the description below to sign up right now while there are still some spots left. Again, limited spots available. Now, one more thing I'll quickly say about that Texans backfield is that Woody Marks, their 4th round rookie running back, is an elite pass catching running back. He's somebody that we should at least talk about. He'll be in a future video coming up in a couple of days because if Joe Mixon's injury is serious, the only other guy who can catch passes in this backfield is Marks. Behind a bad offensive line, they might need to use him. He goes undrafted right now. If you're in a deeper league, you could stash him for now, but just for the most part, just kind of keep that in mind. We don't have to do anything actionable so far. The next situation I want to talk about is pretty interesting because Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos starters in the final preseason game played a lot. They played 21 snaps, and if we scroll up right here, 100% of those snaps at wide receiver position went to Courtland Sutton and Marvin Mims. The only other wide receiver to see significant snaps with his first team offense was Troy Franklin. That means the rookie Pat Bryant did not play here all that much. Looks like these are your top 3 wide receivers, but the big thing is Courtland Sutton played 100% of the snaps, ran 100% of the routes, and this dude was targeted 7 times on 15 routes. Insane. A nearly 50% target share. And on those targets, he goes out there with Bo Nix and continues what he was doing last year. Dominated. 4 catches, 83 yards, a touchdown on those 7 targets. He averaged over 20 yards per reception, had a 43-yard catch in there as well as the touchdown. This is just a reminder, right? If you forgot for any reason that Courtland Sutton in round 5 of fantasy drafts is still the wide receiver 1 on an ascending offense and the only guy here in this offense right now that is a legitimate target threat. Because let me ask you something. I'm not concerned about Marvin Mims one bit. I think he was a very nice young prospect when he was coming into the NFL, right? I think he was like 17 years old, one of the youngest players in the draft. He was just an alpha in that regard in terms of speed. Hasn't done much in the NFL. Pat Bryant's not playing with the first team offense as a rookie. Troy Franklin, okay, he has the connection dating back to Oregon with Bo Nix, but we haven't seen much from him either, right? The only competition here is Evan Ingram, who in my opinion is going to be targeted in the short to intermediate range, where Courtland Sutton will be used more in the intermediate to downfield range. So Courtland Sutton, just a reminder, when you're in your fantasy drafts, if you still have some, which many of you still do. If you're smart, a lot of you will be drafting after the preseason ends. Courtland Sutton as the 50th overall pick at the beginning of round 5 is an awesome wide receiver to be getting, potentially as your wide receiver 2. Depending on how you build your lineups, he could be your wide receiver 3 or 4. That feels amazing. Now, the next situation we have to look at has to do with the wide receivers and the overall offense that we saw out of the New Orleans Saints, because their first team offense, Spencer Rattler, again, we don't know who the starting quarterback is. Maybe by the time you're watching this, odds are that will be announced by that point, since it's only like a week away from the season by then. But Spencer Rattler plays 16 snaps. Rashid Shaheed plays 16. Chris Olave plays 15. Brandon Cooks 12. Those are your top 3 receivers, only guys to see snaps with the first team offense. But the big thing I want to look at here is the way that they used Chris Olave. This is courtesy of PFF. Chris Olave was moved into the slot more in this new Kellen Moore offense with Brandon Cooks and Rashid Shaheed on the outside. And that is very important, because if you're going to get moved into the slot like Kellen Moore has done with his other wide receivers in the past, that's going to lead to a lot of upside, right? You can talk about CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. You can talk about A.J. Brown being shifted into the slot as well, the big plus size wide receivers in the slot. When you get moved into the slot, you have more of the field to work with, right? Both the left and the right side, as opposed to being locked on one boundary on the outside. And you're usually facing a much worse cornerback. You have more yards after the catch ability. It leads to bigger plays and just easier receptions in the middle of the field. And when you look at this last year, right? If we actually look at the percentage of snaps Olave was playing in this game, it was nearly like 40 or 50%, which is double what he saw all of last year. He only played 69 total snaps out of the slot. Of course, he missed time with injury, but just 21% of his snaps came out of the slot. If this doubles this year and Olave is playing 40% of his snaps out of the slot, that's going to lead to upside. Just a reminder, in the games that he started and completed last year and did not deal with the concussions, he averaged 17 points per game and was a top 12 fantasy receiver. That's when people were taking him in the second or third round of fantasy drafts. And now with Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator, I think we're going to see a lot more of a short passing game with the quarterbacks that they have and the way that Kellen Moore is operating this offense based on preseason usage. That should lead to easier receptions for Olave, more and higher PPR totals. If you can get Olave where he currently goes in round 7 of fantasy drafts, feels great. Give me Olave over Jerry Jeudy every single day of the week. This range is just peppered with awesome targets. Odunze probably goes earlier now, but he's still in that range on average. Jalen Waddle's in that range as well. If you can land any of these guys, I love it. But Olave, especially if we're going to get some slot usage out of him, feels good. Now let's go back to the Bears offense real quickly, because I want to talk about their tight end usage. Once again, Caleb Williams, as you can see down here in the starters, played 28 snaps. Colson Loveland played 20 snaps here, which is a pretty strong number, right? He played 71% of the snaps, but Cole Kmet was still involved, playing over 60% of the snaps. It was actually Cole Kmet for the second straight week who started this game for the Bears and was involved. They're using a lot of 2 wide receiver sets. They're also using a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, right? So I think they're just trying to mix and match here with the Ben Johnson offense, but it's pretty clear. Ben Johnson said Cole Kmet was the guy he trusted the most when asked earlier this offseason in the passing attack. He immediately said Cole Kmet, which in my opinion means that Cole Kmet's going to be involved in this offense at least to start the year. Now, don't get me wrong. Colson Loveland is still a very high upside, top 10 overall pick rookie tight end who will be involved. He ran twice as many routes as you can see right here on PFF, 13 routes versus just 7 for Cole Kmet. A little of that has to do with just kind of drives that they were on. Colson Loveland's drives happen to be longer than Cole Kmet's, but it does give me some pause, right? Like, especially when Colson Loveland, he has a legitimate target competition at his same position in a good tight end in Cole Kmet. When you look at some of the other guys who go around him, right? Like right now he's going as, on average, a 9th or a 10th round pick. If I can just spend up one more round and get Tyler Warren, who has no competition at the tight end position for the Colts, barely has any competition in general on his team with Josh Downs banged up. Michael Pittman sure is a quality receiver, but not an elite number 1 target hog who's going to take like a 30% target share away from you, like maybe a Rome Odunze or a DJ Moore can combine for this year in Chicago. So again, we're still high on Colston Loveland. We still think he has a lot of upside, but just based on the other rookie tight end specifically who goes around him and Tyler Warren, I'd much rather have him based on all the information we currently have. We also got some pretty decent information out of the Miami Dolphins offense. Their starters played 17 snaps. Tua played right here, as you can see, and their starting running back for all 100% of those snaps was their rookie Ollie Gordon, who played 100% of the snaps in this game. Just to keep in mind, he saw all the backfield touches as well, of course, as well. But the reason why he played this, Devon Achane and Jalen Wright are both banged up and hurt right now. Achane with the calf, and then Jalen Wright picked up an injury this past week in practice. So that's why Ollie Gordon ended up playing the most. But Ollie Gordon has had a great preseason. He's had a great camp compared to Jalen Wright, who averaged like just 1 yard per carry or so this preseason. Gordon has been better than Wright in the preseason. Wright actually fumbled in the preseason, and now Wright is banged up. There's a world where Ollie Gordon's the RB2 behind Devon Achane, who as of right now is dealing with a calf injury, and based on this recording time, does not have a return date. Now, if you're not familiar, Ollie Gordon was great in college in 2023. He looked like he might be a first-round round running back in the NFL draft, but he went for over 1,700 yards rushing. With his receiving yards, he had over 2,000 total yards. He had 39 receptions. And then in his final year, he ends up going out there in 12 games and having less than 900 yards. He did not look good. But in that season, he dealt with multiple different injuries that were kind of underreported, including a knee injury. But now he looks 100% healthy. He was the yards after contact monster that we're used to out of Ollie Gordon in the preseason. That's what we saw in college. So he might already be the RB2 on this team, on a team that has Devon Achane, who's battled injuries in the past, and as of right now is still battling injuries. Ollie Gordon, I think, is worth the last round pick in your fantasy drafts right now. He basically goes undrafted as a 218th overall pick in most of them. If he's on your waiver wire, he's worth adding in most leagues. Now, we've talked about a lot of guys in this video so far that I like. Rome Odunze, Courtland Sutton, and I like these guys as well to have more than their receiving yard totals this year, because these dudes currently have the roles, the upside, and we're seeing the usage in the preseason to top these numbers. And since we're talking about making picks, I'm teaming up with DraftKings Pick 6 this year for week 1 to give you a shot at their biggest bag ever. Right now, all DraftKings Pick 6 customers can play for free for a shot at a cut of $1 million or more. Pick more or less on 6 player stats, share it with your crew, because the more people that play, the bigger the bag grows, and if you hit all 6, you are in for a share of over $1 million. So if you want to play along, download the DraftKings Pick 6 app, sign up using my promo code SAL, and claim your free token today. Simply put, let's build this bag together. The next situation I want to talk about has to do with the 4th round rookie running back for the New York Giants, Cam Skattebo, because he actually got his first preseason action in week 3, and I think this is important to note. He played all 10 snaps with the starting offense in this game, although Tyron Tracy and Devin Singletary, if we pull it up, neither of these guys played. Maybe there's an outside chance by the time you're watching this, Devin Singletary is cut from the Giants. Wouldn't be shocked, maybe a little bit surprised, wouldn't be shocked. But the reason I want to bring this up, Cam Skattebo suffered a hamstring injury just a couple of weeks ago. People thought it was a re-injury, that it might keep him out the first couple of weeks of the season. He's already returned to practice. He already played in the week 3 preseason game with no setbacks, so he seems like he's going to be easily good to go for week 1. And if that's the case, he's dropped a little bit in fantasy drafts outside the top 100 picks. You can get him like right now on on average often in round 9 of fantasy drafts. Probably not taking him ahead of guys at this point like Javonte Williams, a starter week 1. But after that, like, I think that Cam Skattebo is a guy that you could probably take over these other running backs like Nick Chubb. I'd rather have just Cam Skattebo over Nick Chubb, I should say. You're going to get 1 to 4 weeks out of average production out of Nick Chubb behind a bad offensive line. Cam Skattebo we're trying to take for like week 6 onward if he can take the job from Tyron Tracy. We'll check in one more time with the Bears offense just to quickly state that Luther Burton, their 2nd round rookie, is still not getting all that much usage. He only played 1 snap with the starting offense in this game. He's still behind Olamide Zaccheaus, who earned 3 targets in this game from Caleb Williams. The previous game in week 2, Olamide Zaccheaus had a 30-plus yard touchdown. Based on all reports, the former Atlanta Falcon, the veteran wide receiver Olamide Zaccheaus, is looking like their starting slot receiver right now and is having a good camp. I will say, you spend a 2nd round pick on Luther Burton, who dealt with a hamstring injury, so had a slow start to camp. It's not shocking that he's not caught up to speed yet to actually be with the starting offense. I wouldn't be shocked if by like week 3 or 4 he's overtaken Olamide Zaccheaus, who we know at this point in his career is just kind of a guy. The next situation we could talk about has to do with the Titans, the Tennessee Titans. Their offense, if we look at Cam Ward in this 3rd preseason game, played 17 snaps with Cam Ward, and if we scroll up right here, their tight end, once again, Chig Okonkwo, plays almost every single snap. He plays 15 out of 17 snaps. That's 88% of the snaps. That is way more snaps than he was playing last year in this offense, and if we look at Chig Okonkwo right now, this is a big 243-pound tight end. He's an athletic tight end. If you look at his snap share last year in this offense, the dude was only playing 61% of the snaps. If he starts to get up to that 80 to 85 to 90% range, he's going to be an absolute steal based off of where he currently goes in fantasy drafts as usually undrafted, 187th overall player. Outside the top 20 tight ends is the tight end 22, basically going in like round 15 or 16 of fantasy drafts. I love getting Chig Okonkwo as a late round tight end. If I take a tight end late, then I'll snag him as like a 2nd option, because when you break it down, his only competition for targets right now that I'm actually concerned about seeing, like, you know, over 24% of the targets is Calvin Ridley. I don't think Tyler Lockett's seeing 20% of the targets. I don't think Van Jefferson's seeing 20% of the targets. Alec Imanor has looked good the last 2 preseason games into end camp. He might actually push Van Jefferson for a starting job. Wouldn't be shocked if by the time you're watching this, Van Jefferson gets cut. Maybe a little bit surprised, but not shocked. But Alec Imanor, not concerned about him seeing a 20% target share either. As of right now, Chig Okonkwo remains one of, if not the best late round tight ends in fantasy. And the other guy who's also a really strong late round tight end is the Jets rookie tight end Mason Taylor. He's their 2nd round pick because this dude actually sat with the Jets starters in their final preseason game. His biggest competition is Jeremy Rucker right now for targets. He played in the 3rd preseason game, played 12 snaps in that game. So just the fact that he was playing in this final game and they rested Mason Taylor is good news for Mason Taylor, who as of right now, based on the current way that this team shapes up, has a pretty decent chance to be the number 2 target in this team. Obviously, Garrett Wilson's the number 1 target, but if your number 2 competition is like Allen Lazard and Josh Reynolds, right? Tyler Johnson at this point, there's rumors that Malachi Corley could be cut. Their 4th round pick, Arian Smith, who's a lot of people think they overdrafted, hasn't done too much when it comes to preseason and training camp buzz, it's just Garrett Wilson. So if there's a world where a second round rookie tight end, it's hard for tight ends to kind of break out as rookies. We've seen it in the past couple of years with guys like Brock Bowers and Sam Laporta, sure, but it's still hard for these guys to break out, especially as a second round pick, because they have to do so much. They have to know protections, they have to run block, they have to pass protect, they have to catch passes, right? Yards after the catch, all of this stuff, all while being 250 pounds like Mason Taylor is, right? So it is difficult, but if this guy is going to be maybe the number 2 option in the offense, immediately start to see like a 15% target share, where he currently goes as the tight end 25, 195th or 194th overall player in drafts, is somebody that I want to be targeting. So this is the latest news that we have gotten from the preseason games, and now the preseason is wrapping up, training camps are wrapping up, and this is very important information. It's showing us, we're getting to see what the coaches are thinking for their offenses. And believe it or not, most of your league mates, I would argue like 95% of them, aren't going to pay as close attention to these types of decisions, but the fact that you're still watching this video means that you are. Now, this information should only help you smack around your friends in fantasy this year. Now, in fact, your friends and most people are drafting the wrong players this year, but if you want to see the 5 guys you should take instead, this video right here will help you identify those guys and help you smack around your friends even more.